You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos Country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, Mr. Weatherman over there, right now, here for my town, we are looking at a foot of snow tonight. Woof.
Man, I haven't seen that much snow since my goddamn wedding. but other than that, I'm pulling for you, but that is not what you want to hear. I know, I used to love the snow. My dad is obsessed with Christmas, and I probably shouldn't put this out there on the air, but screw it. You guys listening to this probably Saturday, and a little shorter episode today. We're recording this on Monday, so if the Drew Lock era is underway, I think we got to start actually with that. We don't know right now because we're recording this Monday. Thanksgiving means we got to record this when we can, and Carl and I are both family men, so we got to, family first, football second, and third and fourth. But my father, Christmas obsessed, loves snow. Nobody's happier in snow than he is. And he named me Nicholas after Saint Nick, so he's extra, absolutely extra. I'll have to put up some pictures on Twitter of my house, my parents' house, when that comes, because my goodness, he goes all out. And because of it, I almost feel like I'm a little bit Scroogey. It's like, okay, Dad, you don't need to go this much. You don't need to be playing Christmas music November in the car, constantly singing it loud. But he's just a big kid, so I love him for it still.
See, that's the same for me. My wife calls me Mr. Scrooge, and I blame my mom on this one. We had one year we did our town does, you can go see people's houses, open houses. And so every room had a different theme, and it took us like weeks to get it all set up. And it reached a point where we could not eat in our house because my mom was afraid we'd mess up the house.
Oh, that's not fun. See, that's dumb.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No offense to your mom, but it's meant to be lived in. Oh, okay.
That's me too. So yes, I'm a little bit of a Mr. Scrooge. Always tell my wife if she wants to decorate for Christmas, it's her responsibility, not mine. And so I feel bad about that to a point. But so I'm with you. But you're right. We're family men. So Thanksgiving, trying to head home. Hopefully that foot of snow doesn't keep me from getting to my wife's family. We always go there every Thanksgiving, so we'll see how that goes. But we're still here to talk about some football. And of course, all through the week, even if we're on the road, we're going to be on Twitter talking about this upcoming game and of course the Broncos in general. But you can find me at Carl Dumler MHH and Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. You can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod, and make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, Nick. Well, like you said, we're recording this on Monday, so keep that in mind when it comes to some possible quarterback information that could be coming for the Broncos and even left tackle. Did you get a chance to listen to Vic Fangio today?
I was busy with work, and also I wrote Chad an article about the takeaways the Broncos can glean from the 49ers turnaround, but I did get some tidbits. Okay,
well, pretty much he said that his thoughts on the left tackle position depend a lot on Derwin James and his availability. And so it kind of sounds like if Derwin James can play, Garrett Bowles is benched. And right now, Wilkinson's actually been playing pretty decent the last couple of weeks. I mean, not great, but considering the player that he is and some of the lack of athleticism. But so it wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos did make a decision to bench Garrett Bowles and start Wilkinson there at left tackle, Derwin James at right tackle. And again, we could have some quarterback news. We're not sure yet. They didn't make an announcement today. They just kind of said that all options are on the table. And now for the Chargers, they could be getting back maybe their best player, Derwin James, for this Sunday. That's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, that's the news I was waiting for, Carl. Drew Lock, Schmlock. Derwin James, That's the dude. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Derwin James might be back. They also might be getting back one of their pass rushers as well. And obviously Joey Bosa is playing at a high level. And I think, who do you think their best defensive player has been this season?
I guess I would say Joey Bosa.
Okay. Joey Bosa, great. Melvin Ingram has been unbelievable this season. Have you like the way they're utilizing him? They really unlocked something when they discovered that, you know what? This guy, he's good off the edge, but when we put him over a guard up the B gap, he absolutely kills them. And he's been doing that all season. So it's hat tip to Brandon Thorne. Before that Ravens game last year, the Chargers beat up on the Ravens. He said, you know what? Ingram over the guard, over the center, he could kill them. They kind of showed this a little bit, and he showed out that, and they've been using him that way all season, especially in sub packages where they can bring in Uchenna Nwosu off the edge and Melvin Ingram coming off the middle. My goodness, he is a dynamic player there, and can't play there in base package. He'll get pushed off, but he's been playing as good as anybody. Honestly, almost as good as any defensive player in the entire division. That's how good he's been playing this season. Nobody really talks about him. I know the Chargers defense isn't great. Phillip Rivers is the narrative. Melvin Gordon, Derwin James, first round pick. But my God, Melvin Ingram is playing at such a high level.
He is. I mean, I will say most of the numbers wise, you're still looking at Joey Bosa being ahead of him. I mean, I know raw stats don't mean a whole lot, but you're looking at 9 sacks, 12 hits, 33 hurries, 54 total pressures compared to Melvin Ingram at 6 sacks, 3 hits, and 25 hurries at 34 total. And even in the run game, you got Joey Bosa with 35 stops in the run game and Melvin Ingram only with 23. So, I mean, again, that's raw stats. That doesn't paint the whole picture, but I still think Joey Bosa is having a little bit better year than Melvin Ingram.
Yeah, no, I definitely... Yeah, man, they're really talented, and I haven't heard too much from your guy Tillery this season, but that's okay. I know that typically I know he's hurt. I'm just giving you a hard time because I know he was your guy.
He is, and he's been bad. I mean, I didn't expect him to be great as a rookie. There's just that transition for a defensive lineman is always tough. There's very few. I mean, even
when they're not top 10 picks,
right? And well, even there, Quinnen Williams.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he's having a great year.
Not at all. No, they aren't playing him like Bama did, and he didn't test exceptionally well, and it just has not translated yet. So,
right.
That's I will say, taking interior defensive line in the top 5, top 10, if you hit, it's great, but there are defensive tackles available every offseason, and if you miss there, that's kind of that hurts.
It does. Yeah. Now, I will say, one of the guys that we're going to be talking about in Derek Brown, I think he pretty much does everything.
Yeah.
So, and
he's more like Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah. And you even talked about that against Georgia, they even lined him up over the tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, just that's the kind of athleticism that he has, the ability to even bend around the edge at his size. I mean, it's not Von Miller bend, but who is? So, I mean, there's some of those guys that can really transcend. It doesn't matter what kind of scheme you put them in. They're still going to be talented and make plays. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see how their team is doing this year. They have some strong points. They have some weak points for sure. But, the unit that's actually been struggling the most, obviously, has been their offense. And they've had a lot of issues, not only offensive line, some of their playmakers are not really doing a whole lot. Phillip Rivers, is he done? After this year, is this his last year? Is he going to go somewhere else? Because he's kind of looked like he's been a pretty average at best quarterback.
Yeah, the arm talent just isn't there. It's the easy cheese, as they like to say. Every once in a while you can see the blip of the big throw, but the classic, easy throws that over the middle or, the 10-yard, 5-yard out, a lot of those ones, they're quacking on their way there, wobbling, and just don't have that mustard. So we will see what happens. I mean, he's obviously been a great quarterback for a long time, but man, he definitely has fallen off, and he's a guy that maybe it's because I'm so still scarred by Peyton Manning in 2015, and I just hate to see a guy that, you've looked up to so long play so poorly. But I'm definitely not on the bring Phillip Rivers to Denver next season, even though I'm probably a bigger fan of his game than 99% of Broncos country. He's a crybaby. He's passionate. You kind of get annoyed by the whole, hey dude, why don't you not get your wife pregnant kind of thing. But let's moving right past that. But other than that,
right. And so, I mean, you look at this team, 14th in total offense, 363.6 yards, 23rd in points per game, 20.4, 11th on third down percentage, which is actually pretty good, 5th in passing yards, but it seems like a lot of those yards are pretty empty. And then 20th in passer rating. He's been throwing picks left and right. I think I saw something that he is thrown the third most interceptions this year at 14.
Yeah.
And so just again, not been a great unit so far this year on offense. Rushing wise, they've been terrible. 26th in rushing yards, 23rd in yards per carry. And I've given up 23 sacks, which isn't terrible, but Phillip Rivers is throwing up a lot of ducks to be picked off and really kind of not looking great. But it's kind of one of the things that really sticks out to me this year, just watching him. Melvin Gordon. I'm almost starting to think he might not even be their second best running back on their roster this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one who's made the comment that he really will never, he regrets holding out. I mean, obviously trying to get that money, didn't get it in the end and still playing, but he said he's never going to miss a training camp again. And he's been slow to return to form. And that has hurt the Chargers. It's probably hurt himself, and it's really hurt my fantasy team. So, because everyone loves to, let me just talk the next 10 minutes about my fantasy team. But no, it's definitely hurt him, and I still think he's definitely the most valuable running back they have. But right now, I think Austin Eckler is the one that's playing the best ball. Right,
for sure. And Justin Jackson has had his moments before he got hurt. And so just a couple guys there that I think have shown a little bit more than maybe what Melvin Gordon is showing so far this year. But the unit that's really kind of held them together is the defense. And even though they've been put in a lot of bad situations because of those turnovers, they are still 5th in total yards allowed for the season at 317.5, 12th in points allowed at 19.8, 27th though in third down defense. So maybe the Broncos could actually do something on third down this week if they're not taking 13-yard sacks. But they are 4th in passing yards allowed, 24th in sacks, but they are playing from behind in a lot of these games. 22nd in quarterback rating allowed, and 20th in rush yards allowed. So again, the Broncos maybe could run in this game, and 13th in yards allowed per carry. So just kind of giving you a few of the stats. But the one that really sticks out to me, of just really kind of telling the tale of this Charger season, 28th in turnover differential at -9. And like I said, Phillip Rivers, too many times this year, he doesn't have the arm talent to throw up these prayers. Now, maybe 5-6 years ago, he could have gotten away with some of this a little bit more. He's never been the strongest armed quarterback, but especially this year, he's having to throw off his back foot a lot because that offensive line is downright terrible, and he's just making bad decisions on the field.
Yeah, it's not great, and that makes me feel good because it means that there's a window opening up for the Broncos. But at the same time, if you are somebody who I'll never admit to it, but if you're somebody who's hoping the Broncos do end up with a high pick, this is a game that the Broncos could stumble themselves up into a win. I mean, it's really possible. Chargers team has not played great this season, and the Broncos, I think, after a really putrid game against the Bills, have a legitimate chance to have a bounce back. I mean, they've been close a lot of times this season. Outside of that Chiefs and the Bills game, they've been in every single game. I'd say maybe the Raiders and the Packers as well, not as much, but a lot of their losses, heartbreak, and a few of the wins pretty close as well. So this is a team, I do think they're better than their 3-8 record. They're still not a good team, but this is a game that they could easily win, especially when you have a quarterback who still has a gunslinger's mentality, but the arm is falling off.
Right. Well, and especially I would say 2 of his worst games of the season have been his last 2 for Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
He seems like he's regressing as the, yeah, exactly. And he just seems like he's regressing as the season progresses. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting one that, like you said, it could go either way. Broncos could get a couple of those big turnovers. Maybe Drew Lock plays and the Broncos have a little bit more of a competent offense going where they can threaten down the field. There's just too much to think about in this game because there's a lot of strengths on both these teams, but a lot of huge weaknesses as well that could be taken advantage of. Yeah.
I definitely agree with you there. Alrighty, well, is it time for a break? Do you have any stats you want to get over?
No, those are the main ones I wanted to get out there, just kind of give a little bit of the raw stats, but also I think it does a pretty good job painting a picture of where this Chargers team is at and why they have the record they do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, quick break, folks. We will be right back. Do not go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler. Carl, I guess I'll tip it off to you first here, like I like to do when we come off a break. You get the Broncos offense and the Chargers defense, so not a great task, but a little bit better than you giving me the goddamn Broncos offense versus the Bills defense last week.
Yeah, sorry, man, but there was no winning that for sure. But no, this is a game, like you already said, Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, both having great seasons. Casey Hayward has been a very strong number 1 cornerback for him this season. They got Desmond King, your guy from Iowa that you said you got to see this last week because he was honorary captain for the Hawkeyes. And so this is going to be a tough game to pass on. I mean, again, the tackle situation, we're not exactly sure where the Broncos are going to be at coming to this game. I hope that Derwin James is one of them, but you don't want to bring him back too quick from a knee injury for sure. And left tackle, again, we don't know who's going to be there. Quarterback, I mean, so it's a little bit tough to figure out what the Broncos can do offensively when you have so many of the main positions as unknowns right now. But just looking at this Chargers defense, if they have some weaknesses of where to attack, even though they are a top 10 defense, you could say this year, there are some spots. Defensive line wise, they've been not great. I mean, again, they have the edges doing well, but defensive line wise, do you know who their number 1 graded defensive lineman is this year?
Shot in the dark. I'm gonna go with Brandon Mebane.
Sly Williams.
No way.
Yep.
Wow. Blast from the past with that one. I am, man, that blows my mind.
Do you know who's their number 1 graded offensive lineman?
Is it Michael Schofield?
It is.
Okay, so they're siphoning off the Broncos. I see how it is now.
Yes.
They just want to be like us, and they'll probably sign Shelby Harris and Chris Harris Jr. in the offseason or something.
Pretty much. But no, and now given Sly Williams hasn't played in every game, but just kind of giving you an idea of some of their struggles on their defensive line. So it is a team that you can run on, and so I think the Broncos will be able to run between the tackles, and they'd be smart to do that because also the other place that they struggle at is linebackers. Now, if Derwin James is coming back this week, that does help their run defense because he is such a huge part of coming down, making tackles, really exploding pretty much from anywhere on the field. They've even had him on the defensive line at times to make explosive plays. And so, but I mean, right now we just aren't exactly sure on some of that, but, no, really you got to attack these linebackers. They've really struggled at times and, Thomas Davis has been their best one and he's not been the greatest in tackles. Really, I think his strongest point is as a pass rusher, not really as a run defender or really in coverage. And then you got Kaiser White as another one, but again, just a guy that's been very, very average at best at the position. Drew Tranquill is another guy that's been playing as a rookie, but he's showing his rookie moments for sure. And so, yeah, this is a team that I think you can run on. I think you can run play action at them. You're going to have to really kind of suck up those linebackers and hope that you can hit some plays over the middle. I mean, this is where the Broncos really could have Noah Fant have another big game. He's been getting lots more targets lately. And so I think he can become a quarterback's best friend. And really, I mean, if the Broncos fall behind, they're done. I mean, that's the end-all be-all of this game.
If they can't control it because they fall behind, they do not have the offensive firepower to play catch-up.
They don't.
Essentially.
Right.
And the pass blocking. If they don't have the threat of the run because they are behind, then the opposing pass rushers can pin their ears back. RIP.
Right, exactly. So this is a game where they do have to get up early or at least keep this game close so that the run game is a threat. Otherwise, this is going to be just this is going to be bad. It could get bad in a hurry, no matter who the quarterback is. And so then the other thing, again, with those linebackers struggling in coverage this year, I would make sure to have the running backs very much involved in the pass game. With the offensive line having their struggles, this is, again, a game where you're trying to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand as quick as possible, make easy reads where maybe it's one read down the field to Cortland Sutton or Noah Fant, and then hit your outlet to the running back. So, I mean, and the other thing is you want to try to take advantage of some of their aggressiveness off the edge, especially, and maybe have some of those screen passes set up, not to Noah Fant. Well, I guess screen passes are okay. Sweeps are not okay.
Yeah.
Let's stop that. I mean, you can run some play action or some screens to them, but beyond that, again, this is where maybe you're trying to get Deontay Spencer. They're out in space real quick, trying to slow them down just a little bit to keep them honest and make them have to respect that you're going to hit some of those quick sideline throws. But, really, again, this is going to be a tough game to score a lot of points. This is another tough defense that the Broncos are facing. The fact that they're top 10 without maybe their best player is actually pretty impressive. And like I said, I mean, they still have other playmakers in Casey Hayward, Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, but the fact that they're still doing pretty decent without Derwin James is amazing. So getting him back could make this even that much tougher. But there are going to be some...
Forget the could. I mean, it's definitely possible something will happen, but Adam Schefter tweeted 30 minutes ago. Again, folks, we're recording this on Monday. Chargers designated Derwin James to return, very likely to play Sunday.
Right.
So there it is.
So, yeah, I mean, that's going to make it that much tougher for this offense to do anything. But really it is going to come down to running up the middle, being able to really keep the game going with the offense where you're picking up those first downs, winning the position battle. And then maybe you're just going to have to really lean on the defense to get a couple turnovers, get you some short fields to really win this game. I mean, this is a tough team. Throw the record out. They're still a tough team. There's still a lot of talent on this Chargers roster, especially with Derwin James returning. And so this is going to be, even though the Broncos have already beat the Chargers this year, they were a little bit healthier back then and had some things that really broke their way in that game. And so this is another one where they're going to have some things break their way, which the Chargers can do. I mean, don't get me wrong. They have a lot of games where they did plenty of turnovers. And the last time we saw Phillip Rivers, he threw 4 interceptions. But even with those 4 interceptions, they were still into that game till the very end. So it just kind of shows again how strong this defense is. And the opportunities that they're going to have, especially off the edge, to get after the quarterback. So tough game, run up the middle, play action, keep it simple, but especially if Drew Lock is coming in, give him those one reads and then go to his outlet. I think they'll stand a chance to have at least a few scores that way.
That's a good plan. I think that the Broncos, because of Phillip Rivers' propensity to throw it to the other team, will have a better chance this week, although you could say the same about Allen, but they're much more reliant on that throwing of Rivers than the Bills are with Josh Allen and his throwing. So I have the Broncos defense versus the Chargers offense. Really, I'm playing robber all day. I am looking for the interceptions, the turnovers. I need to jumpstart this offense. Best way to do that is to take away the football. And again, this is an offensive line I don't respect. Phillip Rivers, it might be colder in Denver this week. Don't really respect his arm. So that's, which kills me to say, because I like him deep down. It's like a repressed hatred / love. I don't even know what to make of it. But I'm definitely looking to pick him off and while I guess I am concerned with Keenan Allen against Chris Harris Jr. Keenan Allen, while he didn't have the best stats against Chris Harris Jr. when they played, I think that Allen did get open pretty often, and it's, you kind of seeing it with some Broncos wide receivers this year as well. If the quarterback isn't talented enough and the scheme isn't really doing it for them, then they're not getting it there. But Allen is a concern. Hunter Henry is a guy I've been a little bit disappointed in, and I know he's coming off the injury, and he was injured a little bit earlier this season as well, but that's a big disappointment. But really, I'm stacking up. I'm trying to stop the run, and really, I am playing very heavy zone with guys farther back, and I'm waiting for Phillip Rivers to make a mistake, because I know that if he does make that mistake, that's my best chance to score on offense. So the guy I'm looking to attack most often, if possible, is probably the middle of the offensive line. Dan Feeney, Scott Quessenberry, and Michael Schofield. Not the best interior offensive line. And Alexander Johnson, when the Broncos defense is ticking, Alexander Johnson is coming up the gut in pass rush. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for Shelby Harris to be a week better in that regard. And again, it comes down to the turnovers. The Broncos are going to have to live and die off the turnovers. They have to do better up front than they did last week against the run in order to get those opportunities. So stacking up against the run, first, second down, and playing for the turnovers, third down, and hopefully, a pick six would be incredible for the Broncos' chances to win this game.
It's been a while.
Maybe their best chance.
Yeah.
Really, when was the last time the Broncos had a pick six?
I'm trying to remember that.
All right. Well, you continue. I will be looking for that.
Okay. All right. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about here real quick is what would you say is the biggest matchup advantage for the Broncos in this game?
I would say the biggest matchup advantage for the Broncos in this game would have to be probably the Broncos running backs, running game. Actually, you know what? Noah Fant against the linebackers. Thomas Davis, Denzel Perryman, Jenna Nwosu, Kaiser White, Jatavis Brown. They got some smaller guys. Drew Tranquil, your boyfriend from the last draft. I'll just call it as I see it there. But he's got beautiful eyes. I know, Carl. But Noah Fant, they've been peppering him with targets, and you don't have Tremaine Edmonds out there. Hopefully, maybe it'll be Drew Lock, maybe it'll be Brandon Allen again. But the Noah Fant, he's going to get opportunity, and I just do not respect the second level of this defense. Now that being said, Derwin James being back changes the dynamic a lot, but it will be his first game back. So Noah Fant is the really interesting one there, where I think you might have at the very least, a massive athletic advantage.
Yep. No, I can't disagree there. I did think about the defensive line versus their interior offensive line being a very nice matchup for the Broncos. But where would you say then is the biggest advantage for the Chargers?
Probably the biggest advantage for the Chargers is their wide receivers against the Broncos secondary. I mean, I know you were not the biggest fan of Mike Williams when he was coming out, and Keenan Allen gets a little bit more annoying every time the Broncos play them. But, Devonta Harris has been struggling. Chris Harris Jr. is definitely regressing. Duke Dawson did not have the best game last week. And they have legitimate weapons. And I don't love the depth of their weapons. Andre Patton, Jeremy Davis, Jason Moore, college free agent, not the best there. But those top two wide receivers are pretty darn talented, and the Broncos don't have much talent / depth at cornerback, so it's a massive concern there. So that's probably my biggest concern, because those guys, they can win their one-on-ones, and when that happens, Phillip Rivers typically will see it and get it there. Now, granted, the arm's kind of starting to fall off, it looks like, but that's the biggest thing for me. Yeah,
that's where I would go to. I can't really think of another position that really has that big of an advantage for the Chargers. But again,
cornerback,
like you said,
maybe against the Broncos wide receivers, especially if Sutton is at all limited because of that ankle injury. He played last week with the ankle injury, but 24 yards. Granted, Tre'Davious White is probably one of the top 3 cornerbacks in football so far this season, but that's an area that concerns me just because I have very little. What's the word I'd be looking for here? Yeah, I just don't really love the Broncos' depth at wide receiver.
Right. I do think, a big part of last week was Brandon Allen. You look at that interception that he threw. Really, Courtland Sutton ran a great route. He was open. Yeah. Just Brandon Allen thought he was going to run a different route. So that went very, very terrible on so many fronts for Brandon Allen. But so there were still times that Courtland Sutton was getting open, just didn't have a quarterback that could actually take advantage of it. So I think he'll be okay there. But like you said, beyond that, the Broncos just have nothing at the wide receiver position. Tim Patrick's okay, but not great by any means. And you look at the depth of the cornerback position for the Chargers, they're actually pretty darn good. So, definitely a good spot there. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll get back here for our game predictions.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and welcome back to Building the Broncos as we break down the upcoming Chargers game. Again, we're recording this on Monday, so some of these things might change before then. Of course, I mean, as Vegas gets in their betting and everything else. But right now, as we speak, the Broncos are 2.5 point underdogs against the Chargers. And so even Vegas kind of views this as kind of a toss-up game of we don't know exactly how this is going to turn out. Both teams struggling on offense means that the over-under is at 38.5. And hard to blame them when the Broncos over the last 6 quarters have only scored 6 points. But an interesting stat to kind of present to you here. Chargers are 2-5 in their last 7 games against the spread, where the Broncos are 5-2 in their last 7.
That is interesting. That's good job, Carl. This is why you do this work on this one. You're nitty gritty. I know I'm supposed to be the scientist here, but that's a good find. So
I'm a numbers guy, and I like a little. I'm a pastor, but I like a little gambling. Oh. So,
have you ever seen the movie The Leftovers, or the show The Leftovers on HBO? Okay, I don't want to spoil too much, but it's 3% of the world's population disappears and kind of follows a town. It's an HBO show, and there's one bit where the pastor, he's trying to save his church, and he relies on gambling to do it, and somehow he keeps getting right. So I don't want to spoil it for you. That's one of my wife's favorite shows. She's obsessed with that. I'll come home, she'll be working, and she'll be listening to the soundtrack just to have it as background music. But don't gamble too much. See, I don't have the attention span for gambling, unless it's betting on sports. Like, I'd have card nights with my boys, and I'd play, 5 hands of poker, and I'm like, there's a football on right now, or like, let's play a video game. I just I need a game, but like the constant, like the gambling card games, too ADD.
Yeah, poker I'm not a big fan of.
Okay.
I'm not a good liar, so that doesn't help me in poker. I mean, I'm good with numbers and understanding the odds of me winning a hand kind of thing, but I'm with you a little bit there. Blackjack's my game. I love the numbers game and just being able to try to figure out my odds of winning hands. And I don't know. I could do that for hours. But that's why we've talked that we should try to convince Chad to send us all to Vegas for the draft. But
they just legalized sports betting in Iowa, so I'm probably glad that I'm going to be leaving here soon. Otherwise, I'd start going down to that degenerate path. No offense to anybody out there who's gambling on that stuff. As long as you're taking care of your family or yourself, that's what counts. But it's really tempting. So anyway,
I understand.
Back to the betting here. Speaking of betting, the 2.5 point underdogs, that does surprise me. That put the Broncos on a neutral field as 5.5 point underdogs, and at the Chargers about 8.5 point underdogs. So interesting there.
Right. I think the Chargers are a better team. I mean, if we're being really honest here, and being a road game and them coming off the bye makes it a little bit harder to kind of figure out what they're going to be, because right before the bye, they of course go and lose that terrible game to the Chiefs. And really should have won that game. Their defense did enough to win that game. And for the offense to go out there and do what they did was just pathetic. And so again, you got 2 pathetic offenses coming into this game. And really anything could happen because they're both turnover possibilities. And so anyway, then let's talk about what is it going to take for the Broncos to win. Broncos win if blank.
The Broncos win if they are able to get a non-offensive touchdown. I think that is going to be clutch this week. And I think Phillip Rivers is key, obviously, in that regard. But I think the defense is going to have a bounce back this week. I'm definitely taking the under as far as the over-under goes, but I think the defense is going to be a little bit irritated about how last week went. They're going to play one of their better games than we've seen in a couple weeks.
Can't disagree. I put in here Broncos win if Drew Lock starts.
But I see the smiley face too. Yeah. That's the important part.
No, I think they'd still
What does the eggplant emoji mean? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Oh boy. Yeah. And, really, I think if the Broncos can average 5 yards a carry rushing the football, I think they win this game. And I think they stand a pretty good chance of being able to do that. I mean, even last week with the Bills loading up the box, I think Phillip Lindsay still averaged 4.2 yards per carry. And so I think especially if Drew Lock does start, I think it does open up things a little bit for the run game. And I think they could have a couple big runs up the middle. So I think they stand a decent chance of being able to do that. But I mean, it's still going to take a lot for them to, like you said, it might even take a touchdown outside the offense to win this one.
Unfortunately, that seems to be the state of the offense. So, Broncos lose if I'm going to go, since you had if Lock starts, I'm going to go the Broncos lose if they start Brandon Allen.
Well, yeah. I mean, that should be pretty obvious. I mean, part of me would start thinking about the Broncos starting their third string wide quarterback right now. Or, well, I guess he'd be second string on their roster. I mean, it's just that bad that I don't want to see another game of Brandon Allen. Let's just put it that way. I'd rather
that said, he's doing a really good job being a tank commander.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But even there, like I said, Brett Ripien, that's who I was trying to think of. Yeah. I'd almost rather see him start a game than I would Brandon Allen again. So, but I'm going to say Broncos lose if Noah Fant doesn't have at least 50 yards receiving.
Wow, so he needs to show. I mean, that's a good one. Yeah, they're giving him a lot of targets. They're giving him a chance. I'm loving that. It's going to be a little bit up and down this season, but yeah, there's definitely something that I'm hoping to see, and it's a good one. So MVP if the Broncos win, I'm going to go with, man, this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Kareem Jackson. He had that big game against the Chargers last time, was the MVP, had his real showing out party. Hasn't had the best last 2 weeks, still playing great football, but that hasn't had the best last 2 weeks, so I think he's going to bounce back this week, like I've been saying with the defense bouncing back, so I'm going to go with him.
I'm going to go Shelby Harris. He had that really big game 2 weeks ago, and I think this is another game that sets up well for him to have a really big game. I just see him standing a chance to get that 2-3 sacks in a game. And also Phillip Rivers, with pressure in his face, likes to throw up some footballs. I think Shelby Harris can knock down a couple passes. And so I could see him being the MVP in this one.
So, all right, the GOAT if they lose, I will go with Rich Scangarello. The offense, obviously you have to execute it, but has not been the best the last 6 quarters. I mean, 6 points in 6 quarters is not getting it done. So I'm going to go with Scangarello this week for the GOAT if they lose. Okay.
Good choice. I'm going to go Chris Harris. I mean, coming off a couple bad games really here in a row. And he's got a tough matchup. Yes, he did pretty decent last time, but is this just a sign that he's wearing out as the season goes? Or is this a game where he could bounce back? I could see him really struggling in this one, giving up a couple really big plays.
Absolutely. All right, well, the unsung hero if the Broncos win, I will go with... Man, I was going to go with A.J. Johnson, but he wouldn't be much of an unsung hero. I'm going to go with Duke Dawson. Not the best game last week, but he's that nickelback defender right now, and with how much Keenan Allen plays that slot, with how much they use zone, and Hunter Henry, and the running backs being used, I think Duke Dawson has to have a big game if the Broncos defense is going to show out and win this one for him.
I'm going to go Royce Freeman. That receiving ability, he's a little bit better receiver than Phillip Lindsay, and his ability to run between the tackles. I think this is the game that sets up for him to have a bigger game than Phillip Lindsay. And I think the Broncos could go the hot hand, and he actually ends up getting more carries than Phillip Lindsay.
Well, he did have, I think it was 2 carries for 10 yards. Or 20 yards. There you go. It's 10 yards and a carry. Woo! Well, that would be a big one. I thought about him too, but I just feel like he's kind of fading. Now, that said, last week they had that pass to him where if Brandon Allen would have actually gotten it out there, Freeman could have been running for a while. So definitely interesting to see. And final score, I'm going to go with the Chargers winning this one 17-13. I think they cover the spread, and the Broncos fail to put up 14 points another game in a row. But hey, 13 is trending in the right direction.
Okay, should we do 2 final scores, one with Brandon Allen, one with Drew Lock?
I'm going to go 17-13 either way.
Either way, okay.
Either way.
All right.
I think that this is a team. I think Lock. Okay, let's go 17-13 with Brandon Allen, and I'll go 20-17 with Drew Lock, because I think you'll see a little bit more explosive plays, but I bet you Drew Lock makes a boneheaded decision as well.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, well, I'll go Chargers win 20-10 if Brandon Allen plays. And I'll say Chargers win. I'll go, I guess, I don't want to go the same score as you. I'll go, I guess, Chargers win 21-17 if Drew Lock plays.
Well, there you go. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter, at Carl Dumler MHH, and myself, at Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter, at Mile High Huddle, and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.